Kash, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Great to be with you, Glenn.
Yeah, it's good to have you. This story has bothered me and some of my friends who have been in the military and have had, top secret clearance. They say what the media is reporting is just not possible. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I wrote an extensive piece on it, just that, and I think it was published in Breitbart, and the New York Post picked it up. But a former deputy director of national intelligence and the guy who did the presidential daily briefing for the commander-in-chief have an idea of how this types of access works, and you covered it. 21-year-old National Guardsman, even if you have a top-secret SCI clearance, doesn't mean you have a need to know. He certainly did not have a need to know to access, under the law, this type of intelligence about war planning operations, military movement, and the Saudi intelligence. It's some of our most closely kept and guarded secrets, as it should be. So he did not, and I don't believe for one second he has acted alone. And I think the fact that the New York Times and the Washington Post were the first ones to break the story and investigation before the FBI, the same guys that did Russiagate, and I may be biased because I was the guy that ran the Russiagate investigation and exposed it all, but this doesn't happen by coincidence. Somebody is covering up their tracks and somebody is looking for a scapegoat because the underlying crux of information shows that the current commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, and his administration have been lying to the world about the failure of our $115 billion in the Ukraine.
Okay, so there's two subjects here. I want to talk about the leaks and what they tell you, but I want to stay first on how did this information, I want to make sure I understand and the audience understands, you can have a top secret clearance and you can log on to whatever that internet thing is called. What is it called?
The JWIC system.
Yeah, JWIC system. You can log on to JWIC, but you have to specifically know what it's not like it's just piles of documents sitting there. You have to know what you're looking for, and you have to go through other portals to be able to get this stuff, correct?
Yeah, think of it this way. Think of it as a giant mansion that has multiple bedrooms that are locked with the goods and household products of whoever lives there. Just because you have the key to the front gate with your top secret SCI clearance doesn't mean you have the keys and the codes to every single room and bank vault in that glorious mansion. Classified information works the same way. There are literally millions of federal employees who have a top secret SCI clearance, but there are less than 0.5% of those employees who have the need to know compartmented code access to grant themselves access to this information because it's structured that way on purpose. Whether you can log into a system or walk into the vault room with all the paper documents, you are not by law permitted in the entry room, in the foyer even, unless you have been granted that need to know. And a 21-year-old Air National Guardman doesn't have a need to know of this kind of information.
So my researchers said their gut said to them, somebody else that has access to these documents either sent them to him or whatever, got them to him, and he's just a front guy.
Yeah, that's what I wrote. That's what I specifically came out and said before, as soon as the story was breaking and people were screaming at me. And I said, listen, it's not about politics, Democrat, Republican. This guy has had this documentation and putting it out for 6 months. That's a campaign. That's not one page printed off and stolen off a printer and said, oh, here you go. Here's one piece of intelligence. There's hundreds of documents. We don't even know the extent of it. And you can't access over a continued period of time as a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman in Cape Cod. It just doesn't work that way. Somebody, either at DOD or the intelligence community, either wanted this information out or he found someone who wanted the information out like he did and helped him with that process and access. Look, if I'm wrong, I kind of actually hope I'm wrong, Glenn, and here's why. Because if I'm wrong, the other truth is even scarier, that our classification system is so broken and so destroyed that a rookie can walk in and go harness our nuclear secrets. That's what happens if I'm wrong. And it's not about me being right or wrong. It's the alternative. It's so much worse.
Well, that's what, that's one of the things I keep coming back to. We should be talking about this. Because this guy either had somebody on the inside, or you're right, it's so porous that any of the millions of you, as you say, that have that top secret clearance, can go in and get anything. And Americans need to know, not Republicans, not Democrats. This is all of us.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And that's what's so striking about this, and it's why it's riddled with analogies to Julian Assange. And whatever your political orientation is, you can't, I might be in the minority in this, but I don't justify this kind of behavior because it exposes waste, fraud, and corruption. There's a way to go about it, and this is not it. And so for those politically who are cheering this action because of the end result, that's not how the United States of America works, because there's going to be 100 guys behind him that do this if you permit this sort of justified disclosure of intelligence. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Okay. So now let's try to figure out, is there a pattern in the leaks? Because they seem to be kind of all over the board. Some of them seem to be something that could have helped us with some of our, frenemies. There was only really, the only one that I saw that I thought was really damaging was the one that we have a spy at the, in the Kremlin. That's not good for the health of that spy. Who did this help? What side did this help?
I think it was a combination of things. And what I mean by that is that you saw sort of a shotgun disclosure, because the ultimate goal of what they wanted to disclose, in my opinion, based on what's out there, is the information regarding the Ukraine conflict. And the other disclosures were put out there to sort of have lines of effort to say, wait, let's throw some people off our tracks. That's another reason why I don't think this was done alone. This wasn't just some kid who's like, I'm just going to throw up a bunch of pieces of paper in the air. Whatever you guys grab in this chat room, we can talk about. No. It was very specifically done. And it was done with other people assisting him to do it, like the folks in the chat rooms, who might also be government employees. I don't know who any of these people are, but apparently the New York Times and the Washington Post do. And maybe they want to go talk to them, at least the FBI, and figure it out. But it was done in this fashion. It's kind of going back to Assange. He did it in a more streamlined fashion because he said he had a revolving door of information to put out. This may be the scenario here. This was just sort of the first shot. Does he have other conspirators who have more information out there? We don't know that answer yet, and neither does the FBI.
So does it appear to be, the information that you have seen, does it appear to be a message that your government is lying to you and you have no idea what's going on in Ukraine? Or...
That, to me, yeah. That's the central message to me. And you have to look at the characters that are involved. Chairman Milley, who used to work for me when I was chief of staff at DOD, has become the most political operative in Washington, D.C. And that's saying something when, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, by law, you are forbidden to enter politics.
Wow.
And he was the guy that said, hey, I'm going to call my Chinese counterpart if during the Trump administration we are going to come after you. He has, one, broken the law by entering the operational chain of command. Two, the thing he wanted to achieve was a relationship with the incoming Biden administration because he wanted to keep his job. I think you're going to see down the road people in senior DOD positions like that say, because it's going to come to a head, either Joe Biden lied to the world about the Ukraine and its status, or he was lied to about the intelligence about the Ukraine and said we were succeeding. The other piece is members of Congress, where the Gang of Eight informed about the underlying intelligence. If that's accurate, then Congress also lied to America while saying the Ukrainian effort was a win, or we were winning. And I think when you enter that fray and sort of have government officials target each other, somebody's trying to cover their own rear end, and we're going to find out when it shakes out. And I remember Chairman Milley's leadership role is up in 3 months. He's out. He's gone. And he's been no stranger to talk to media while in that seat, and especially when he leaves that seat. So I would say stay tuned, but it's a very suspicious line of effort.
When you look at the information about the Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, describe it in relatable terms of people who are not really following it. They just know, we're there, we're doing stuff. It looks like it could get dangerous. How bad is it?
It's bad. We're doing everything but going to actually declare war. When you spend $115 billion in less than a year What you have to do is arm, man, train, and equip. What that means is it's cute by half. We don't have, quote unquote, conventional American soldiers on the ground. That may be mostly true, but we have contractors, former United States military operatives on the ground, training them on tanks, training them on weapon systems, training them how to shoot, training them how to defend their positions, etc., because they can't do it alone. That all costs money. But the problem with Ukraine is it's going to be the modern-day Afghanistan. They don't have an international banking system to access. So we have to give them literally pallets of cash, and we know how that's gone in the past. And we have no idea of where this money is going. And this is problematic for many reasons, but the most is the following. In a year, we are going to have conventional American forces on the ground in the Ukraine, and we're going to be back into Afghanistan situation because everyone in Congress, or most of them, is bending the knee to the defense industrial complex, which is the most corrupt organization in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that's saying something. So, Kash, you said just a minute ago, in a year, troops will be on the ground. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so it's called operational preparation of the environment. And when you drop $115 billion into a theater of war, which is what the Ukraine is, regardless of your position, you are doing absolutely everything in your power to encroach upon a war and obtaining the political headline of saying we don't have boots on the ground. You don't take it that far unless you are going to put and commit boots on the ground, because the defense industrial complex is in charge of those decisions. Why do you think so many Democrats and Republicans are banding together? Because the defense industrial complex spends more money and gets more of our taxpayer dollar than any entity on earth. And when you invest that much capital into the Ukraine, the very next political forcing point is going to be, we've already come 99% of the way. We now must commit troops. Now, it might come in the force of U.S. troops in a UN-style program, but to me, there's no difference. Once we're there, we're there. We already have contractors there, and those are former military guys. And the Ukrainians, it's not like they're going to know what to do with our equipment a year from now or 10 years from now, and that's not on them. It's just because it's our equipment.
Right.
What, are we going to leave it there?
You know, well, we did in Afghanistan. You said we're shipping pallets of cash. That is so insane. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but in World War II, because we had to drop cash off in Hawaii and in the Middle East, they had a different seal. You know, you have that little green seal with the, E on it or whatever. Yeah. It had a brown seal and a yellow seal. And that way they could cut that money off if it wasn't just flooding the market. If they say, wait a minute, this has been stolen or whatever, they could track the dollars because they had those seals. I don't know why we don't do things like that. We could have made all of that money in Afghanistan worthless overnight.
We could have, but that's why we don't. It's an intentional decision. When Barack Obama flew pallets of cash to the terrorists and the mullahs in Iran, he did it without tracking devices and intelligence operations for a reason. He chose not to. When we pulled out of Afghanistan, or when we were dropping off money into Afghanistan, only to watch their leadership, Karzai and company, fly out of Afghanistan with our money in helicopters, they did it without any sort of capabilities attached to it that we could. And they're going to do the same thing here. I mean, this is why you don't have to believe me. Why is it that you think no member of Congress or no member of this administration can tell you where this money is going? They can only say we don't have proof that it's not being abused. That's because you have no idea and aren't asking the questions and don't want to know the answer.
Correct.
It's going to be forced upon your feet like it was in Afghanistan. Because right now you can say, and the popular effort is, we must fund the Ukrainian war. And they're championing that political headline for the time being. It will evaporate.
I have just about 90 seconds left. Any thoughts on Nord Stream? Do you think we blew that up?
If Joe Biden blew up Nord Stream and didn't know how to do it without keeping it quiet, it just goes to show you why I've been saying he doesn't have a grasp on the national security apparatus of this country. Do we have the capabilities to do it? Yeah, sure, probably. But did we do it? Honestly, I hope not. I honestly think the Russians did it, and they're just using it as propaganda because it's an easy win for them. We shut it down in the Trump administration. They turned it back on, and the Biden administration realized how explosively consequential it was to us and our allies to allow that to happen. And now Russia, they're smart. They're not dumb. They can go down there, turn that thing off, blow it up, and say, look at what America did. We need a rallying call for the Ukraine. And they got one.
All right, Kash, I like that. I like that answer much more than the answer I keep coming to, which is I think we did it. So I'm going to go with your answer. Thanks so much for talking to me, Kash. Kash Patel. You can follow him on his website, fightwithkash.com, fightwithkash.com.